Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Success is Complicated podcast. I am your host, RaQuel.
And I am your co host, Cieara Davis. So, today we are talking about happiness. I called Raquel and I said, let's talk about happiness. And my thoughts behind that is we've talked about healing, we've talked about trauma, and through all of those things, what are people truly looking for? And I think it's happiness.
So, we're going to talk about how to cultivate happiness today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, Cieara has been coming up with all of these topics. And I'm like, girl, they so vague. Like, what you want us to talk about when it comes to happiness? But I did think about it this morning. And I guess context wise, right? I was like, I need to put myself in those shoes because I was trying to define happiness and I really couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you cultivate happiness? I was thinking about, because today I feel extremely happy. Like, it doesn't feel like it's fleeting anymore.
Right.
As opposed to the past. And as I thought about it this morning, what I realized is when you are in pursuit of happiness, you're trying to avoid suffering and pain.
Right.
And
like happiness happens, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen, right? Because I think that there are things that you're doing and you're
It does just,
of,
I think it does just happen.
It just happens. Well, then if it just happens, then we ain't cultivating, right?
I mean,
but you can look up.
My grandma would
like,
say,
wow.
You better get to know somebody. But so I thought about it, right? Because oftentimes, we go through life trying to check off boxes, right? In pursuit of not experiencing difficulties, right? If you go to college, right? The goal is to be able to make money, to not have to experience what comes with not having money.
Right.
So in just thinking about cultivating happiness, what I started to think about was I threw on the therapy lenses again, because there are 4 demands that we all face in life, right? And those 4 demands, it's death, mm-hmm. It's isolation, it's meaning/meaninglessness, and freedom. And I was thinking this morning, I was like, you know what? Going back to school to become a therapist was probably the most beneficial thing to like my personal life. And I would say it has even added value to the people that are really close to me, because you start to understand it from a different meaning. And I remember one time reading this quote that said, information isn't always knowledge and knowledge isn't always wisdom. So when you talk about cultivating happiness, right? I think that you have to be able to take the knowledge or the information that's already provided out there and turn it into wisdom. And it's very difficult to do that if you have this polarized thinking, right? So when I say polarized thinking, right, when we say like, find your joy, find what makes you happy. Like, to me, that's polarized thinking, right? Because the focus is on finding happiness. So right. You've gotten already into this extreme place of chasing, finding joy, that there's no room for anything else. And because there's no room for anything else, polarity doesn't exist in your life, meaning you're not able to see opposites.
And I think what that also says, Raquel, is that happiness doesn't live here. If I got to go out and look for it or find it, then it isn't already here. And what you and I and anybody else out there who knows about happiness is always right where you are. Happiness is inside of you. It's contrary to the circumstances. Like, you could have had, I don't know, the craziest accident in the world and can still be able to find joy and happiness in those moments, right? But yeah, go back to the polarized thing.
No, you just made me think, because often when there are so many theories and modalities out there, right? I remember when I had read this book in my program, A Man's Search for Meaning.
Mm-hmm.
by this psychotherapist, or he may even be a psychologist. His name was Viktor Frankl. And I had thought about, like, now, granted, I'm not going to school anymore, but going to school like fresh out of like undergrad or any of those
Right.
things. I've had a set of experiences, been married, I got kids, made money, and the way that I received this information was different. And when I read that book, I was like, this man lived in concentration camps
Right. And was able to find happiness.
and was able to find happiness. But he also talks about it being like an attitude, right? And he talks about suffering, and he says that there are three things in order to find happiness, right? Is purposeful work. And love. There's a story where he talks about all he could think about was like his wife and like people that he loved. And the other thing was being courageous in difficult times. And he said that for the people that survived those concentration camps, they were able to find purpose in whatever they were doing. They were able to hold on to love despite not being in relation with the people that they loved, and then just being courageous in difficult times. And I thought it was so powerful because I had never heard of that. All I had heard was healing, assess people, and talking about difficult times as if difficult times were meant to break us, and we just needed the ability to cope or just skills. And it's a little bit deeper than that, which makes me I want to go back to those four demands, because the one that keeps coming to my mind is isolation, especially when you talk about COVID, right?
Right.
And just being I thought about COVID, and I also thought about like romantic relationships or like marriages. And the thing about isolation is that you have to learn to be with yourself, and also learn to be with yourself when you're with other people. And so much of us so much of who we are is in relation to other people. And I thought about it. I was like, man, when you talk about being married, like, you never want to feel like you're isolated from your partner.
Right. You don't want to feel alone.
Yeah, you don't want to feel alone. You don't want to feel like somebody misunderstands you. Or even when you talk about like pursuing entrepreneur goals, right? Or just pursuing new work. Like, people say that entrepreneurship is lonely, but that's the polarity of it. Like, is it really like being able to live within the gray? Like, it's understanding yourself through others, but also being able to understand yourself alone. And I feel like because people don't necessarily understand that concept, it does not allow them to truly cultivate happiness.
So when you say like being in a relationship and being able to be with yourself, like, what does that mean?
Oh my gosh, because I've been there. I'm like, oh, this is, you think sometimes like it's marriage for you and stuff, but some of it is so ego driven because you feel like somebody owes you something in a marriage. And when I was thinking about it this morning, I was like, isolation. Okay, what does that mean with being by yourself? It's not having the expectation of someone understanding all of your needs and your desires, and being okay with that. And that's hard to do, right? Because you're supposed to add value to me. You're supposed to like pick me up where I may not necessarily be able to pick myself up. So when you talk like being in a even when I was thinking about it from a parenting standpoint, right? I know a lot of women say like, sometimes I feel like I'm doing it on my own. And what ends up happening is we allow our thinking to trap us into victimhood. But that is like that is a part of, I guess, thriving in order to truly cultivate that happiness. Like, I didn't get it then, but I really do get it today. Like, it's okay to feel like you're alone in a marriage, because it doesn't necessarily mean that you're alone.
So, RaQuel, what that makes me think about is like true versus truth, right? A lot of times we can move away from our happy places because of the opinions that we put on it ourselves, right? So, I let's say I trade the financial markets and
Mm-hmm.
so forth, right? Um, and I lose $2,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I could really be like, oh shit, I'm the worst trader in the world, right? But true versus true. Have I lost $2,000? True. Am I the worst trader in the world? Not so true, right?
Right.
And when we start to grab on to those polarities, as you would say, or those opinions, that is what pushes us down the road of unhappiness, right?
Right.
That is what drives this, I guess, unsettledness, right?
You know what I just thought about was like, because we talk oftentimes about like your zodiac sign. What's your zodiac sign?
I'm a Leo.
You're a Leo. I'm a Pisces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you get caught up in that, right? Because I'm like, I am a deep feeling person. I can feel everything. And then what ends up happening, you get so caught up on your feelings, like
Right.
feeling every damn thing, that you forget that you're also a thinker. So I try not to like label like. Granted, I still think the Pisces is the best sign in the world. But I am more than just a filler. And when I think about like the things that have probably drove me from my marriage, it's like, oh, I want to feel this because I am a Pisces and I can feel how you feel. Like, I'd be asking Dan, I'm like, are you okay? And he'd be like, I'm good. I'm like, well, I think something is wrong with you. Like, and that's because I done told myself, like, I am a feeler. Like, I can feel your energy. Girl, can you like shut that off for a second and not forget that you're thinking like you might be irritating him with those questions?
Right, but I think that is also like, being able to be in the moment and allow.
Yeah,
Right?
but the other thing too is going back to the isolation, right? Like if you have identified yourself as a feeler and somebody's not feeling you, or you feel like they're not feeling you, or they understanding what you're saying, like it creates separation.
Correct.
Because we are all thinkers and feelings and feelers, even though like maybe you may think more than I may feel, but what doesn't change is I can experience both of those things.
Right, right. And when you try to hold true to any idea as like
Label or identity.
right, as my husband would say, like that is where the pull happens. That is where the unhappiness happens. That is where I may not be good enough, or happiness is fleeting. We feel good right now, while we're doing this, and then I look over there, your face look turned up. Oh, something must be wrong. It's just like if we just are able to allow and not label experiences. What I guess one of the things that I found is just watch it work itself out. I don't say not act, right? Because you definitely should get into action when called to. But and when I say when called to, I mean you know when you should be in action.
So the first thing that we're telling people is one way to cultivate happiness is to understand that it's okay to be in isolation. Like it's actually normal. To be in a marriage and to feel alone is actually normal. It's your responsibility to figure out how to lean on that and not make it about your partner or your spouse. Now you need to use your thinking skills to figure out if that's the one for you or not. But knowing that we all confront that, which means that the other person that you're actually dealing with too is dealing with that as well, because
Right.
in relationships we're all trying to grab something from each other. And in essence, when we're always focusing on that, it doesn't allow us to honor that aspect of being in isolation and also being in relation with the person. So think about how you think about being in isolation, because even when you think about COVID, right? I said I did want to say that when it comes to COVID, like everybody was in isolation to some degree, but yet everybody felt like they were alone in isolation.
Right. Or connected.
Or connected. Yeah, however you want to look at it.
When I think about COVID, when I was in my house, but I was probably more connected than ever, right? Because I probably talked to you a whole way more than like
Right.
normal. I was playing what bingo with people in
But you
Virginia
probably aren't the
and
person that struggles with isolation. Like, we both have grown in a lot of different ways. Like, and you know what I'm talking about when we talk about marriage, like sitting in that and just being like alone, like you, because you have to do your own work, so to speak. So that's not an area that you necessarily struggle
it
with.
is an area where I've struggled in, right?
Struggle in, but not struggling today.
Because I would say I had to be okay with my husband living his life, right?
Right.
And I don't know about all you women out there, but men are able to. I was having this conversation, and like they're able to have fun just easily, right? They could just walk out the door and be kicking it with the neighbor next door, end up drinking a beer, and we in the house, cleaning, doing stuff, and then we worried about the man. Why don't you come in here, help me, all this type of stuff. Like, be in your zone.
Right,
Like,
but that's the isolation
right,
aspect of it,
if
right?
you
Like,
want
come
to
in
be
here and watch TV with me, like spend some time with me, and you have to learn to enjoy your own company, even in relationship with other people. That's even with your kids.
And that does not mean that your marriage is falling off the like hilltop
Because you feel alone.
right, because your husband is outside with the neighbor drinking a beer, watching the kids go up and down the street.
Or he doesn't feel what you're feeling. So isolation is one. Which one do you want to talk about next? I want to talk about death. Which one you want to talk about
I was
death?
actually gonna go to death too, so let's go there. I mean, and I really want to go there because I feel like death is where a lot of pain happens for people. And I can't say that I've experienced some of the most, I guess, I can't say that I've experienced, I don't know. I don't know how to say this, y'all. But RaQuel has lost her mother. um, and I can't say that I have experienced the same thing. I have both of my parents, and I can't imagine that type of loss. But I'm sure that when we talk about death, that's the one that you really can get hung up on, like losing that mother figure.
So I have, because you remember one time we had talked about I don't know, somebody had told me that I was insensitive to death.
It probably
Like,
was me.
it probably was you. Like, insensitive, and I'm like, okay, your grandma died. All right, people die all the time.
I just told her my aunt Josephine died. She was like, "Well, was anybody close to her?"
Did you have a relationship?
I'm like, that's my grandmother's sister. She looked.
Did you know her? Because we're not finna have this conversation if you ain't even know that lady like that. Did you know her?
I live out of town.
Did you know her?
Yes.
Are you sad?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. So
She's 90 something years old.
She lived, child.
Right.
She lived.
Right.
She lived. And it probably does come off insensitive because folks do die. Like, and I don't know if, because what I try to figure out, right, is do I feel that way because I'm angry, right? Because people say people be projecting, right? Do I feel that way because I feel like my mom was taken at such an early age? And to be honest, I do not think that I feel that. I don't. I think that in the past I have been insensitive. I'm right. Okay, your mama died. Mine did too. So what's your problem? I don't think that I feel that way today. I do understand that death is inevitable. Like, death is inevitable, and there are certain things about death that we want to control.
Right.
Meaning, do you die too young? It's how you die, the way we want people to go out of here. And I would say that when it came to me, like, I think my mom, she died at a young age, but today I would tell you that she was taken when she was supposed to be taken. Like, I've had to learn to trust that in order to be okay with death. When you talk about how did she die, right? An overdose, like, you be like, oh, first of all, you don't even want to tell anybody that because you be ashamed. So I've learned to sort of detach. And I think more importantly, what ends up happening is we like, oh, you lost a child. Oh, you lost a mom. And then those things make it worse. Now, I will, like, my dad is getting older. And sometimes I'm like, are you crazy, Quill, or what? Because I'm like, I'm going to be all right if I lost him tomorrow. And I really do think that. But that does not mean that I will not experience sadness because that's the ending of something. But I also understand that change is inevitable and like nature doesn't allow anything to last forever. Like, is your lemon tree still dead?
Is my lemon tree still dead?
Is something dead? Because she be planting and...
So no, my lemon tree is not dead. However, because we just are coming off the cold kind of season here, my lemon tree has no leaves. But
okay, so the leaves have died. That's the point that I'm trying to.
And they're coming back.
Oh, they're coming back. Yeah. Well, once somebody leave this earth, I don't want to send that message. They're not coming back. Like, they're not coming back. But the point is, in order to cultivate happiness when it comes to death, I think that there are some important things that we must understand, right? Like, we don't get to control how death happens. So because here's what people get confused. They're like, okay, I understand that death is going to happen, right? But we still want to control how and when it happens, right?
Do people truly understand that death is going to happen? Because I think, people live so detached from death. Like,
well, that's another thing. Right. Some people live detached from it.
It almost seems like one of those things that, is shunned away, put in the lockbox. It ain't going to happen. So when it really does happen, I think that people are always like shocked, right?
That's true.
And then you hold on to this perspective of like, like, why were they taken from me? They weren't supposed to go. They weren't, but not really understanding
that death is the inevitable.
Death is the inevitable.
Well, I guess that's one side.
All are on that trajectory.
Right. That's why they say that these are 4 demands of life that we all will face in one way or another. And if you're not open to them, like, your suffering feels more like, I can't find another word, like suffering. But and the thing about death too, because it's not just like a person dying, right? Like, we lose identities, we lose jobs, like, and we end up grieving a lot of those things, but recognizing that, like, things don't stay the same forever. Things don't last for forever. And I think that when you're able to see it from that point of view, right, it allows you to be more at peace with what life has to offer.
Right. And understand that the closing of a season doesn't necessarily mean the ending of everything, right? Because if you lose a loved one, if you lose a career, if you lose
the closing of a season doesn't mean that you've lost everything.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, if you lose these things, it doesn't mean that everything is over, right? You still have a go at life, right? And
well, I'm gonna. So I love that you said that, because when I go back to like losing my mom, and granted I lost her as a child, and there were a lot of things that I didn't necessarily agree with as a child, and I will say that a great deal of my suffering into my adulthood was because I didn't get an opportunity to redo it, right? Mm-hmm. I know for a while I went through, just be glad that you have a mom. Like, I went through that phase too. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that was projection, because I'm like, well, if I could do it all over again, maybe I would have appreciated her a little bit more. If I could do it all over again, maybe I wouldn't have had as much judgment as I had. So It's interesting when you say that, because sometimes ending those seasons do feel like you've lost everything, because I remember experiencing it. However, I can't get that back. I don't get to go back and say, like, I apologize for. I guess the apology would be that I didn't get it, and I don't think I would have gotten it until adulthood. But I think that the very fabric of who I am, I needed those experiences to, like, become the person that I am, because I do think that I'm empathetic. I think that I'm a great listener. I work well with people because I do have the ability to, like, refrain from that judgment, because adulthood is like no joke. Like, and now that I realize that I'm a human too, and that my shit stinks as well, I'm like, okay, there's a little bit more grace to be extended to my mom. But as a child, I really couldn't do that. But there was a season where I felt like I had lost everything, and it wasn't necessarily losing her. It was a chance to not get it right. But having my dad has allowed me to show up in a way to where if I lost him tomorrow, that I don't feel that regret, because you can get so caught up on, like, judging how other people choose to live their lives, that love, it becomes conditional. And I don't know that I could bear that again. Like, I don't want to feel that again.
Right.
I don't want to feel like I didn't take advantage of you actually being here on earth.
Right. And RaQuel, I think that you dialing it back for me, because like I said, I have not experienced that loss, right?
Well, she told me, hey, Miss V, Mr. She told me that if she lost y'all, that she would be prepared because she understands death.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
What I told her is, I said my life may be flipped upside down, and what she said is, "What you say?
I don't
Don't
remember.
start that. Don't you do that, because don't you say that." And
right, that is what you said, because you were already preparing for your life to be flipped upside down.
What I realized is that death is just as death is a part of, just as much a part of living as dying is. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, I ain't understand that.
Death happens every day. Like the same way we living every day. People be dying every day.
True. That's true, B.
So that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And a lot of times when we get stuck on death based on how it happened, what happened, and all of those things, instead of just, it's okay to be sad because we lost someone. It's okay to be hurt that we lost someone. It's okay to even feel all of the feelings.
But let's be honest about reality is the other side of that too. Because that is a reality. Like because death is the black and white portion, right? And the gray is when, where, how. Oh, shoot, I ain't talked to you in 2 weeks.
But like, those are the details.
But it's the gray. Don't get caught up in the details, but also learning to live within the gray.
Right.
Because not getting caught up into the details just means that you understand, like, I understand the gray.
Right.
I understand the gray, and that's just and that's just that. So we talked about isolation.
Right. We talked about death.
We talked about death. And I'm looking at the time, because I had talked to my uncle back at home in Virginia, and he was like, I like y'all podcast. I listen. But that jank longer than a motherfucker. Like, that's what he said to me. And I was like, is it long? He was like, yeah, I was like, well, we'll probably try to cut it back to like 40 minutes. He said 40 minutes. But, he don't understand podcasts and everything. But I thought it was funny. But it just made me think about all the love that we're getting from VA and the people that are listening back at home, even though we're all the way in Texas. Like, we really appreciate, like, your support. Like, VA is for lovers.
Yes, VA is for lovers. And I see y'all, like, and I love y'all. Thank y'all for the support. Like, it's amazing, like, to really be able to share some of these things with y'all. So again, thank you.
Yeah. So Uncle Mark, we're not going to be able to cut this because we still got 2 more things to talk about. And if you just don't want to listen anymore, you just don't have to listen anymore. But I do appreciate you tuning in.
No, stay tuned.
He said he's not going to watch this longer than a motherfucker.
He'll stay tuned. He be reading them long ass books. But go ahead.
So isolation, death. No, so you just let me go back to what he said because he feel like this podcast is all about mental health. But granted, coming from our community, we don't necessarily understand. What mental? When you hear mental health, we hear crazy. Right. So what he tried to tell me is, he said, "You talking about all that mental health stuff? That mental health stuff don't got nothing to do with your mama's side of the family. That's all on your daddy's side." I'm like, what? But I didn't even go to explain him that mental health isn't about like you being crazy. It's about, understanding how you think, you feel, and you behave, and continuously trying to challenge that so that you can evolve and grow into like your best self. Because, this journey is forever, but he don't want to hear all of that. But so we talked about isolation. We talked about death. You want to talk about freedom or you want to talk about meaninglessness first? Which one do you want to talk about?
We can talk about meaninglessness.
I knew you were going to talk about that.
Okay, go ahead. Jump right into it, friend.
So it's going back to like we all have this will to create meaning, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of the times what we do is like there's already an inherent meaning for life. And if there is already an inherent meaning for life, it doesn't allow you to construct your own meaning for life. Right. And just, it makes me think about the death part, right? Because when I think about like losing my mom, for example, or even being in a marriage or a relationship, right? The inherent meaning is you're supposed to make me happy. Like, your parents are not supposed to die in your 30s. Like, we already have these things set without even speaking about it. And what ends up happening is we never construct meaning for our own lives, and we just end up on default mode. It's kind of like autopilot. Like, you don't even know that you have these beliefs. Sometimes you never know you have them, but you don't know that you have the beliefs until you start having these challenges. So being able to construct meaning matters. And oftentimes when we're not able to construct meaning for our lives, we end up feeling meaninglessness. And when you think about like it being a demand on life, I think about when I wanted to quit this job back. Like I had wanted to quit a whole bunch of times.
She did quit one time, y'all, and just left
that second time
dry. I was so mad the first time.
Yeah.
But the second time I was prepared.
Right, because I was prepared, because I wasn't prepared that first time. Yeah, I wasn't prepared that first time, but I didn't feel a lot of purpose. And people would say, well, how do you not feel purpose when you work for your uncle? He's done these amazing and incredible things, but that's like his, and the family part of it, especially from Black, you talk about generational wealth and all of those things. And I think that is an inherent meaning too. Like,
and that was hard for me too. Like the fact that you didn't feel a lot of purpose, and I felt like we were doing great things. Like, I felt like some of the things that we were implementing from a human resource standpoint were really great. I mean, we're not going to get into the details, as I told y'all, don't get attached to the details. Yeah. But I really did feel like we were doing some great things. I mean, and so much to the.
Well, I learned isolation quickly because I didn't feel like we were doing anything. So I learned to be by myself and be misunderstood. Because I didn't see any.
She was not by herself, and nor was she misunderstood, because I really did.
Because you still think that. No, you still think that there was a lot of purpose in the work that we were doing, and there was not. That's why I left. There was not a lot of purpose. I think
that when
for me,
we're talking about a good thing right now, meaninglessness, right? And I think, that is when I think I probably was really able to find my happiness, right?
What do you mean?
Really being able to understand that it all has meaninglessness, right? And what I'm saying is we do stuff because we want to see the purpose in it, but not being attached to whatever the meaning or the purpose of that is.
Well,
It's
I had
just,
an
I mean,
inherent
it's
meaning with
free.
working there, and my inherent meaning wasn't based off of the work. My
No, no, no,
inherent meaning,
not
no,
your
I'm just
meaning.
saying because I want to clear up a lot of a so prior to me constructing meaning, right?
Mhm.
My meaning was like I got to walk in every day. I got to see my best friend. We got to travel all over the world. I mean, we done been to over 16 different countries together.
Right.
We've been
Oh
all
yeah.
over the world. I get to see my uncles, like
Probably more than
it's
16, but keep like
we didn't travel.
yeah.
We didn't travel. And for free. When somebody else has died. But the meaning for me was like about family.
Right.
And you realizing that like I could rewrite my own narrative and not feel like family or like the good things that my uncle had done had to be my story. And that was very hard because when you talk about like generational wealth and you think about like, we used to talk about like our kids being able to intern there and giving them
Right.
opportunities, like what we see other cultures doing. And what you realize is like, I didn't really feel like that was for me. I didn't really feel like that was for me. And it could always change too.
Right.
It could always change. Like while I'm outside of the group, like I feel like I could always come back inside of the group, and it would be based off of me constructing my own meaning, not because of like this family rule that we have or this whole family over everything because that's one way not to cultivate happiness. Like
Right. If
so
you get caught up on what family should look like instead of constructing your own definition of family and moving through it the way you would like to, and you can end up really unhappy,
Yeah,
right?
because I was thinking, so I'm the when I think about like everything that there has been a lot of meaning, right? Because I got a seat at the table very early,
Mm-hmm.
meaning that I got to see like money, like big decisions being made. So now that I'm in a much larger organization, like it's like I'm able to one I had never seen the other side, right? Seen the other side, but I am able to construct meaning to today. But I think that uncomfort that I felt while still working there allowed me to be able to experience like the opposites as well.
Right. And so, RaQuel, what you're really talking about is the meaning, like finding meaning to cultivate happiness, right? And I see it a little bit different. I know you're talking
Okay,
about a
okay.
framework, right? But to me, it's the ability to n- understand that meaning happens, to assign meaning, but also the ability to let go of those meanings.
Mm.
So the meaninglessness has been like the most empowering thing for me, because if you get caught up on family or what a family should look like or the elements of a family or the dynamics of a family,
Mm.
then how can you really be able to shift and move when things change, right?
Right.
If you get caught up on, I guess, on having a person, right? If you lose that person through divorce or death or
A
like or a
job.
job or however, how can you move on if you're tied to that meaning? I
That's
mean,
a
you could
hard
give that
concept,
past
right?
you could
So
give that past a
meaning
meaning.
and then meaninglessness, right?
Hmm.
In essence, what you saying is, which is true, which I understand. I'm not gonna say it's true, which I understand. Nothing has meaning in life. It only has meaning when we assign it meaning. So
Right,
that's
right,
that's the
right, right,
polarity
right,
of it, right?
right,
Is
right.
understanding that your ability to construct meaning for your life and purpose like matters. Like I don't care if you're janitor, college student, mom, wife, like you have to be able to construct meaning, but you also have to be able to detach from
the
what
meaning.
those meanings were, right? And
Right.
that is the way that you cultivate happiness as well. Now I'm glad that you highlighted that point, because in the beginning I said meaning and meaninglessness, but the meaning part is so important to me, because honestly that is one way that I truly cultivate happiness, and I just allow myself to confront meaninglessness when the time presents it, because I do have that understanding of the other side. Like I've put too much weight on this one thing, and now it may be impacting my happiness.
Right. Right.
So no, that's a good point. That's a good point. So the last one, do you have anything else to add
No,
to?
I think we can move on.
You think we
from
can move on?
meaninglessness
Okay.
and meaning.
Okay. So the last one is freedom.
Right.
And there's several different ways to think about freedom, because I believe that we all have free will. And everybody wants to experience a sense of freedom, but with freedom comes overwhelm and anxiety and all of those other things.
So, RaQuel, when you said freedom, and we're talking about happiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So often people get happiness and pleasure mixed up. Meaning, if it makes me feel good, then I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is furthest from the truth. And I'm saying this in the freedom portion of this, because when we talk about the things that will truly lend us the freedom to, I don't know, it really takes doing the work of happiness. Like people don't understand that it does require.
Well, you can't be in pursuit of happiness,
right,
though.
right.
Because if you're in pursuit of happiness, you're not open to the other side of. Well, yeah. Well, no. The other side is unhappiness.
Well, no. When you said the pursuit,
right?
A lot of times when we get into that
pursuit, the pursuit of happiness is pleasure, is what you're saying, like the pleasure aspect. That's why it feels fleeting.
Right. We try to engage in pleasurable
right.
activities.
That's what I did, girl.
And I don't know what you was finna say.
No, I'm saying I have did, because happiness for a long time felt like it was always fleeting. Mm-hmm. That my decision making was based off of me feeling happy in those moments or pleasurable. It makes me think about, like, what's that last trip we took to Thailand? Like, I spent like $20,000 on that trip.
More like 70 if you count the gambling.
I did not tell you to put my business out. Like, okay, I did. I knew about talking about. Yeah, money. But it had but it had an impact. But it's what you saying too, because that gambling. Lord. Yeah, I had gotten into gambling. It's real bad. Like I've made a lot of money and I've lost a lot of it as well. I did. I lost a lot of money that Thailand, and I remember how I felt good in the moment. I felt good on the trip. I felt good sitting back, like watching the kids and all of us being together. But when I got back home, I still felt like crap. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly what I was in pursuit of happiness. And being in pursuit of happiness, I don't know, like going back to what you said, like happiness like lives within you. I think that happiness is your birthright, right? But it's also like you choosing that too. So no, I mean that is a good point, because when you're looking for things to be pleasurable, right? It affects your decision making. Right. And that's why I said, like, this old Pisces thing, I'm a feeler. Like, I want to feel good. Girl, you need to think, because you keep talking about you want to quit this job 24/7. And then you out here just blowing your money. Like, they're not going to be, like, consequences. Right. So, RaQuel, and that was the freedom. Right, that's why I was going to go back. I had the freedom to... What is the freedom aspect? The freedom aspect is feeling like there are no constructs, I guess, or anything like limiting you or holding you back. Like you feel in control. Right. You feel you really do. You feel in control, like the freedom, like I am in control. And I think that that's important, right? Because you have to recognize the agency that you do have. But with freedom, it can be very overwhelming to a lot. I think about it from, I don't know why entrepreneurship just came to my mind, but being like an entrepreneur, or like you have the freedom of your time, the rules that you create. But if you're not mindful of that freedom that you do have, like shit can start falling apart.
That's why I say it's not pleasurable, right? The freedom requires work. Like in
There's a
order
level
to
of
have that
responsibility with
right,
freedom.
right. In order to have that happiness, like your shit gotta line up.
Yeah.
Because if it don't, you you're right back into it fleeting, right? Because
And every single day, right? So when you talk about like these are 4 demands that all humans must face, right?
right,
Each day that you wake up, you have free will.
right.
What you choose to do with that free will is where you can end up cultivating happiness or not cultivating happiness. So the freedom is like personal accountability.
I love that. I definitely love that because that's I mean, that's what I think about when we talk about freedom, because so many times people think about freedom as like this
Doing whatever you want to do.
right, doing whatever you want to do. And oftentimes that's just like eating whatever you want to eat, right?
Right.
It doesn't really offer you the freedom, right? Because if you eat too much, you'll of course be overweight. You'll be I mean, and
When you
if
don't
it
look
gets
good, you don't feel good.
right, and then
Right.
You don't look good, you don't feel good, you can't participate in the activities that you want to. You
Right.
don't have the energy to run
Girl,
around with
don't
your
I
kids.
know?
And what kind of freedom is that?
Right. So it's understanding that you do have free will, but with free will comes a great deal of responsibility. It's, and it made me think about like in relationships, right? People gonna do what they want to do.
Right.
They gonna do what they want to do, but when you choose to do what you want to do, there's another side of that too.
right.
Like there is another side of that. Like there are consequences and rewards for all of the choices that we make in life, and that's just. I think that I'm glad that we talked about this, right? Because you keep on bringing the topics because
I don't know if I'm gonna do that.
Okay, well that's no pressure. But no, they've really been good because I think that while we have talked about cultivating happiness, we've also offered a dose of reality too, right? Saying that you don't cultivate happiness by chasing joy or in the pursuit of happiness, because what ends up happening is you're not open to the other side. And a lot of times I always hear this like therapists saying, like, or like people that have been in therapy and they're like, I've learned about black and white thinking. No, you ain't. Let me tell you why you ain't learned about black and white thinking, because your whole focus is on protecting your peace. And in protecting your peace and establishing these boundaries, that is all or nothing thinking, because you're not open to anything else. You're in the pursuit of what makes you feel good. You're in the pursuit of healing. You're in the pursuit of growing. And when you're in the pursuit of those other things, like if you're always in the pursuit of healing and growing, you're not in the pursuit of like contentment.
Right. And what that made me think about, RaQuel, is how they say like depression is whenever you're, living in the past, right?
Right. Or hopelessness, helplessness, and all of those, right?
Because we're our mental health podcast.
We are not.
Thank you for correcting me.
Baby, get it. There go my black, but baby, get it right. Get it right.
When we have anxiety, right, is the future, right? We're constantly thinking about the future. But happiness truly lives in the now. Happiness is right now. It's not next week. It's not when I get when you get that degree. It's not when you have that baby. It's not when
you have the perfect marriage.
You have the perfect marriage, or you find the perfect spouse. It's right now. It's happening right now.
Yeah,
it's where you are.
It's where you are. So to summarize it, 4 ways to cultivate happiness is Understanding the four demands that we're all going to be presented with as humans. And I'm kind of going to go out of order. I'll start with death. Understanding that death is inevitable is something that we all will approach, and not just looking at death as losing someone, but also understanding that it also could entail losing certain identities that you once attached yourself to. The second thing being freedom. We all have free will. Every day that you get up, you get to decide what you do with your life, but understand that there's a responsibility that comes with that as well. And that's where a lot of people start to feel overwhelmed. Isolation. Isolation is normal, but the other side about being humans is so much of who we are and how we understand ourselves is in relation to others. But you have to learn to be in isolation with self and with others. And the last thing is meaning and meaninglessness. And meaning is being able to construct meaning for your life. And as Cieara so beautifully said, meaninglessness is understanding don't be so attached to the constructs that you have attached to meaning in your life, because it doesn't open you up for other things. So we've enjoyed this conversation. This is episode 5.
Right. Season 2, episode 5.
Right. Follow us at Success is Complicated. And I'm going to make sure that I tag C's personal page, because she did mention that she does professional trading, and she offers some great tips about trading that also translates to like life in general. Like she gave a gem this week that I thought was just like so beneficial, and I love watching the tips. Even though I'm not a trader, I can't be in the trading world because I'm not mature enough, because I am in pursuit of money. So it does not work for me, but I love all of the tips that she gave. I ain't there yet. All right, y'all, follow us at Success is Complicated. And until next time, we out.